Isaiah 2:11 reads, "The haughty looks of man shall be brought low, and the lofty pride of men shall be humbled, and the Lord alone will be exalted in that day." I am Rob West. Pride first made its appearance in the Garden of Eden and has harmed our fellowship with God ever since. But what does thinking too highly of yourself have to do with money? I'll talk about that first today. Then it's on to your calls at 800-525-7000. That's 800-525-7000. This is MoneyWise, biblical wisdom for your financial decisions. So I think we should first make a distinction between the sin of pride and what we often call taking pride in our children or maybe doing a job well done. For that, we might use the word satisfaction rather than pride. And there's nothing wrong with taking satisfaction in your job or your family if you always remember to give God the glory. He did, after all, give them both to you, along with everything else you possess. Even the ability to earn money is a gift from God. The pride we're warned about in the Bible is quite different. We read in Proverbs 16:18, "Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall." C.S. Lewis wrote that pride is the great sin that leads to all the others because it exalts the self over God. 1 John 2:16 tells us, "For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and pride in possessions, is not from the Father, but is from the world." The sin of pride can be described as having an exaggerated view of yourself without regard for others. And history shows that from the Tower of Babel to the Titanic, that kind of pride is proven to be disastrous. So how do you know when you're having a problem with pride? It's been said that pride is the easiest sin to spot in other people. It's difficult to spot pride in yourself because it's the one sin that tells you you don't have it. Maybe that's why Jesus says in Matthew 7:5, "You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye." But the one way to tell that you're giving in to the sin of pride is that you've become critical of others. That's just another way of exalting yourself over others. So pride is spiritually deadly, but it can be toxic to your finances too. Pride can reveal itself in any number of ways, and it often leads to other sins. Certainly, one of the ways pride shows up is when we fail to manage money according to God's financial principles. The first and most important of those is that God owns everything, and we're simply managers or stewards. Pride tells us that we own the things God has entrusted to us, and that we can do with them what we want. Pride leads to all kinds of bad decisions, and a lot of them are financial in nature. It could be something as simple as missing out on bargains and spending too much because you refuse to buy generic items. Or maybe you won't shop at discount stores because you feel you're above that. Proverbs 29:23 reads, "One's pride will bring him low, but he who is lowly in spirit will obtain honor." And pride often leads to big financial mistakes, like buying too much house or too fancy a car. Those are far more serious and can often be traced back to pride. Then, of course, there's just running up a lot of credit card debt. Often folks will say they had no choice, but more likely it's because deep down they feel they deserve a higher lifestyle than God has provided. The Bible repeatedly warns us that pride goes before destruction, and often that destruction is financial. But His Word also says that as God resists the proud, He gives grace to the humble. For most of us, humility doesn't happen by itself. We have to work at it, in our finances and elsewhere. Fortunately, God's Word encourages us and teaches us how to be humble. First, before God, as we read in James 4:10, "Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will exalt you." But also humble toward one another. Here, Jesus' second great commandment is key. Love your neighbor as yourself. And Paul states in Ephesians 4:2, "With all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love." And in Philippians 2:3, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves." By thinking more highly of others, extending grace to them, we humble ourselves and allow God to extend grace to us. Being financially generous requires humility and putting pride aside as we think more highly of others. Proverbs 19:17 says, "Whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his deed." All right, your calls are next. 800-525-7000. This is MoneyWise, biblical wisdom for your financial decisions.
Author Ron Blue reminds us of the promise in James 1:5.
If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask, and let him ask in faith, and then obey.
And in his book, Never Enough, 3 Keys to Financial Contentment, you'll find that biblical wisdom to help you navigate your daily money decisions. Right now, you can request your copy with a gift of $25 or more to MoneyWise. Just visit MoneyWise.org and click the Never Enough banner at the top. That's MoneyWise.org.
If you have money in a retirement account or just a general investing account, you know the stock market can sometimes be like a roller coaster. But it is possible to enjoy both profit and peace of mind in investing, no matter what's happening in the market. You can see a short video webinar on that topic at soundmindinvesting.org. Since 1990, Sound Mind Investing has sought to offer financial wisdom for living well. soundmindinvesting.org.
Well, we're so glad to have you back with us today on MoneyWise. I'm Rob West, and we're looking forward to taking your calls and questions. Here's the number, 800-525-7000. Hey, would you like a financial professional who understands the counsel of Scripture, who's been specially trained to bring biblically wise financial advice in addition to meeting high character and training and experience and regulatory requirements? Well, that's why we recommend the Certified Kingdom Advisor designation. It's the gold standard in terms of biblically aligned professional financial advice. And you can search for a CKA, a Certified Kingdom Advisor, in your area when you visit our website, moneywise.org. Just click Find a CKA. I'd encourage you to interview 2 or 3 if you're looking for an advisor in financial planning, investments, tax and accounting, insurance, or estate planning. Again, moneywise.org. Just click Find a CKA. Let's head to Tampa, Florida. Paula, how can I assist you?
Okay. I was just wondering, when you're talking about trust and wills and all that stuff, what is the payable upon death? What does that?
Yes. Yeah, it's a great question. Basically, that's just a type of account that provide a way for assets to be transferred to a named beneficiary after you pass away without going through probate. So that POD, or what's called TOD, POD is payable on death, TOD transfer on death, same thing, basically bypasses the probate and can be set up at most financial institutions for checking and savings accounts, as well as CDs, even money markets and savings bonds. They're generally accepted under state law. So it's basically a wealth transfer and estate planning tool that just allows particular assets that are titled with those types of accounts to pass outside of probate. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Is there anything negative about setting up that compared to something else?
No, other than, keep in mind, you'd update your will periodically as your life circumstances and situations change. I'd say, whenever there's a major change or, if you've gone over a number of years, kids are getting older, you move to a different state. I mean, all of those would necessitate an updating of the will. You just can't forget to update the POD because that's going to happen separately, not necessarily according to the will. So it's just one more thing to stay on top of if you want those beneficiaries to change over time. But apart from that, there really shouldn't be any issue for the average person who has just a typical size estate. We appreciate your call today. To Holland, Michigan, Luke, thank you for your patience. How can I assist you?
Hi, Rob. I have a quick question regarding a simple will. My wife and I had a will done by an attorney several years ago, and we've had some additional children and just need to make some minor changes. What are your thoughts on the online legal, just like a simple will online, like LegalZoom or stuff like that versus an attorney? I mean, it's like $90 versus $700. Is an online simple will sufficient?
It's better than nothing, Luke, but it's not my first choice. Yeah, you could save a few $100s. I mean, the average will done by an attorney should be $500. That you may find them in some cases a bit more than that, depending on the complexity. Whereas, as you said, you may be able to get one online for less than $100. And again, if you don't have anything, I would say that certainly would suffice. I just think it's an important enough process to go through that to make sure it complies with all of the laws in your state, to make sure that all of the appropriate questions are asked and answered that you may not have thought of, that an attorney can bring to bear. Not to mention, are there other documents, legal documents, that need to be put in place at the same time that an attorney could draw up for you? I'm thinking a healthcare surrogate or a living will to make sure that end-of-life decisions are made and taking that pressure off your family, even a durable power of attorney that could be put in place so that it's there if needed for certain folks to act on your behalf or your wife. So I think, having an attorney, a godly estate planning attorney, help you navigate all of that, and not to, bring unneeded complexity, but just to make sure that everything's done appropriately is a good thing. So if it were me, that would be the direction I would go. But again, you can have a fully valid will and save a few $100s by doing it online. You just, may not fully consider all of the implications. Do you follow, though?
Absolutely. That's pretty much what my wife was thinking, but my wallet was opening a little creakily, so I was trying to, cheap out. But you're yeah, I follow 10-4.
All right, tell your wife, one in her side of the ledger from me, and she wins this round. But I appreciate you calling, and thanks for listening, Luke. God bless you, my friend. Streamwood, Illinois. Fina, thank you for your patience. How can I help you?
Well, I was wondering, is it okay to have only one savings?
Yeah, so tell me a bit more. You have a checking account and you have a savings account, and what is that money earmarked for? Is that your emergency fund, or is that for some other savings goal?
Yes, it's for emergency funds, but hopefully it stays that way. And
yes.
If I pass away, I'm planning to give it to my grandchildren, because my children, I've already given them their share.
Oh, okay.
So
all right.
I'm planning to pass it on to my grandchildren.
Great. And how much have you accumulated in that savings account, Fina?
So far, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's 14,000 something.
Okay. Well, what we would typically say is at a minimum, you'd want to have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. So whatever the total that you spend on a monthly basis, and multiply that by 3, or even better, 6. And that would be your goal. In the retirement season of life, I'd love for you to have, as much as a year of expenses that you could fall back on if you needed it unexpectedly. It sounds like, though, that you have a purpose for this money beyond just emergencies, because you're continuing to try to accumulate money that could then be passed on as an inheritance. So I think the only question would be, after you get beyond 6 months or a year of expenses, is there something else you want to do with it? Is it money that you don't expect to use? It really is for inheritance purposes, and therefore you'd want to put it to work so you could get a little bit more in the way of return than, the half of 1% at best you could get from an online savings account with FDIC insurance, although with that would come more risk, with the possibility you could seek a higher return. Tell me about that piece of it in terms of, would you want to take some risk and invest it beyond, at the most, 12 months of expenses, or are you wanting to keep it very safe in a savings account?
Okay, I'll just tell you the bank. It is an Ally Bank.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure they use that money to put it in a, what do you call that?
Are you thinking a money market?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, well, Ally Bank is great. They have great customer service, very good rates, and it is FDIC insured, so it's protected. I guess the only question would just be, once you get beyond a certain threshold, and I'm going to say if you're a retired person living on a fixed income and this is really your only fallback, I'd love for you to have as much as a year in that savings. But when you get beyond that, if you wanted to put that to work to invest it, to try to grow it a bit, you certainly could do that, or you could leave it right there. But I think what you're doing is a great thing. I'm glad to hear you're living well within your means, which is evidenced by your ability to add, as you said, $200 a month to the savings account. So I would say keep it up. It'll be a great blessing to your grandkids down the road. We appreciate your call today. Stay with us. Much more to come.
Siri, what's the best way to save for college?
I'm not sure.
Well, what does the Bible say about co-signing for a loan or investing for retirement?
I don't know that either, but you can find those answers on the free MoneyWise app.
Really?
Sure. You can connect with the online community and get answers and encouragement from MoneyWise coaches.
That sounds great. Siri, download the MoneyWise app.
Got it. Learn more at moneywise.org.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I couldn't have had the procedure I needed without CHM's help sharing the bills. That letter from a member displays Christian Healthcare Ministries' purpose to glorify God and serve His people. CHM is the original non-insurance voluntary health cost-sharing ministry, enabling its members to share the cost of each other's medical bills. Call 800-791-6225 or visit chministries.org.
Well, we're so glad to have you back with us today on MoneyWise. I'm Rob West, and we're looking forward to taking your calls and questions. Here's the number, 800-525-7000. Back to the phones today. Lines open, 800-525-7000. Bruce, thank you for calling. How can I help you?
So, I'm looking for your advice. I'm 65 years old, and I have a small pension that I was blessed to be able to have from a company that I worked for years ago. And the pension has some different options of when you can take it. I could have taken it last year, September 1st, when I turned 65. I chose not to, and I just was wondering if maybe you could help me work through the math or see what makes sense. It seems like maybe I should take it now or what. And I thought I would get your advice on that.
I'd be delighted to. Tell me the details.
Sure. So it's a small pension. Last year, if I would have taken it on my actual 65th date, it would have been $435 a month.
Okay.
By waiting, it goes up every month by a small amount, but currently, if I took it right now, it would be like $478 a month.
Okay.
But actually, that was August of this year. If I waited till August this year, it would be $478. And another milestone might be if I waited till next March 1st, it'd be $501 a month. The reason for waiting till March 1st is next February, my wife turned 65, and we were thinking about the Medicare ramifications and all that as well.
Yes. Okay, very good. And did you say you already are retired at this point?
No. I'm still working full time. I have blessed to have a good job and everything, so I'm still working full time. And my goal was, Lord willing, I'd retire probably next February, which would make I'm 66 in 2 months would make me a full retirement age. But next February is when my wife turns 65, so we were kind of planning around that at that stage.
Okay, very good. And have you done your retirement budget, Bruce, so when you get to that point, you have an understanding of what it'll take to fund your lifestyle?
Yes, I think we've looked at it. Now, thankfully, another Christian advisor a few years ago, Larry Burkett, resonated with us, and I followed his instructions back then. We got debt free.
Great.
So we can probably be able to go into retirement with a minimal amount per month. We don't need to have anything extravagant. So we've already figured it out. We would be able to go into it with a pretty good budget.
Okay. And so you're going to be counting on, though, at that point, Social Security plus this small pension. Do you have any other income sources or retirement assets?
Yes. We have, my wife has an IRA and a Roth, and I have 401k, an IRA, and a Roth, and then we have savings.
Okay.
All right. Very good. Yeah. I think, it sounds like you're in a great spot. You've kept your lifestyle at a minimum. I love that you heeded the counsel of Scripture vis-a-vis Larry Burkett, who was one of the pioneers in bringing God's word to bear in modern personal finance, and still is having a huge impact today. It's amazing how God used Larry and continues to use him even after he passed in 2003. And so because of that, you've applied these principles, you're in a great spot. And I think, as to when the right time is to take the pension is just going to be a function of a couple of things. Number one, comparing your need to the income sources you're going to have at various points. And then to the extent you have enough and you don't have a need for the pension, looking at the growth rate of that pension, the internal rate of return that you would get versus waiting and letting that continue to grow, and then comparing that to reasonable expectations in the market just to see, if you don't need the money and it's guaranteed to grow, then obviously there's going to be a period of time where you'll have to make up what you weren't collecting for that year or two. But beyond that, you'll then enjoy that higher payout every month for the rest of your life, and hopefully with survivor's benefits for your spouse. I think that's really the thing to look at, and that's going to be a function of how healthy are you. We don't know how long you have here. None of us do, but if you're healthy and you believe that, you've got quite a bit of time, Lord willing, then, obviously, if that money is unnecessary, it's really just going to be a function of, can I do better by taking that money and, let's say, investing it? Or should I just let it grow in the pension? And, that's really going to come down to matching up those various income sources you have that you can count on to the budget need as to determine the timing of when you start collecting both Social Security as well as the annuity, and how you handle those other retirement assets in terms of pulling income off of them based on, the investment strategy that's deployed. So as long as you're talking to your financial advisor about all of that to look at, am I going to do better waiting on Social Security versus the annuity? Are my investments invested properly based on what we're expecting with probably a slower growing stock market over the next 5 years? I think you'd put all of those together and then make some decisions at that point. Does that make sense, though?
Yeah, it does. It does. Thank you. I'm just with the stock market. You mentioned something that's obviously on my mind too. Is at this stage, being this close to what you might consider retirement age, should I? It sounds. I'm adverse to a lot of risk, and I wouldn't want to put all my money in the stock market and risk losing 40% of it, because you need years of time to get that money back. Sure. When you go through these cycles with the stock market. Yes. So am I too close to retirement to be taking that kind of risk? Well,
I wouldn't be at this stage 100% invested in stocks for sure, because I think you would need to be willing to weather about a 35% pullback just based on historical norms if we were to get into a recession or we saw a significant bear market that lasted for a period of time. Now, typically it will recover. It always has. But as you said, it's going to take some time. And that's why you'd want to perhaps take some risk off by diversifying away from stocks, reducing that stock exposure so that you have a portion that's invested in stocks. Because remember, this money, if the Lord tarries and you have good health, needs to last for a couple of decades or more. That stock portion is going to be the growth engine, but you do it in such a way that while that part is down, if we got into a season like that, you're not going to touch it. And it can have that 10-year plus time horizon, and you'd be pulling income off of the fixed income type of investments, which have their own challenges in a rising interest rate environment. But that's where I think the planning of an advisor could come into bear here. So, I feel like you have all the pieces, Bruce. You've thought through this. You've done made the hard decisions along the way to limit lifestyle and pay down debt. All of that is good. Now it's just a matter of timing. And I think as you lean into your advisor to run some calculations on what's going to be best in terms of the timing for the Social Security and the pension, and what is the right investment mix for your other assets, certainly reducing risk now and heading into retirement is the key. Thanks very much for your call. Well, that's all our time today. But before we go, if this program has been a blessing to you, would you consider becoming one of our prayerful and financial supporters that helps this program stay on the air?
You can donate securely online when you click the donate button on our website at moneywise.org. And thanks in advance. My thanks also to our broadcast team, Amy, Dan, Brandy, Rob, Kent, Rich, and Jim. And I hope you'll make plans to join us again next time for another edition of MoneyWise.
MoneyWise is provided by MoneyWise Media and listeners like you.